Hidely ho, neighborinos. Welcome back.
Hi!
We're not going to muck around, we're going to get straight stuck into it. If you haven't seen part 1, what are you doing here? Go watch part 1 and come back here for part 2. Sorry, that was rude. I'm trying to channel Greg Davis from Taskmaster.
As they tackle tasks for me, Greg Davis, or, as I'm also known in certain circles, 22 stone of prime marbled beef.
There were a few loose ends from the last video that I thought should be tied up. So we're going to talk about a few other topics. Can you get an audience to laugh purely from sound? The master of rhythm, and a few comedians who are messing with their comedic rhythms. No hints as to who that might be.
But the story happened far from these shores.
Okie dokie, let's get stuck into this bad boy. Welcome to Rhythm Part 2.
My money don't...
Ooh!
Did I miss?
No. You got them.
Just start to be or not to be.
You can't say that. It's gibberish.
But it's short, William. It's short, doesn't it? Flows. To be or not to be, that is the question.
I think a good jumping off point is, can rhythm on its own be enough? Can a comedian get an audience to laugh purely from sound and intonation, even if they removed all intelligible content? We know from the last video that comedians are good at messing with different kinds of rhythms, contrasting them in strange and amusing ways.
We can dress a lot of comedy up as writing and the choice of words and whatever, but ultimately it's about a rhythmical thing that people find pleasing. And one melody is sort of doing this and the other one's undercutting it, and so it's where those sounds and rhythms fall.
And I think you're right, because so much of writing and performance is about juxtaposing the lyrical with the percussive.
Maria Bamford is super good at this. Her routines gleefully depart the logical world and depend more on the strange sounds she mushes together. Listen to how she contrasts the robotic, the gurgling, and the asthmatic for maximum effect in this low-stakes ripoff of Project Runway.
Blossom, you're funny and you're cute, but you pee on everything. Maria, you say you're trying, but you're clearly not. Blossom, you're in. Maria, you're out. Congratulations. Auf Wiedersehen.
Sometimes language falls away entirely, and we're left with this blonde-haired grunting goblin.
Gonna drizzle in some half heavy cream, whipping cream, sour cream, ice cream, cake, batter, peanut butter. Egg. Bon appetit and goodbye.
If Maria is amazing at making different kinds of sounds, it's interesting to consider what happens when you make the same sound over and over and over and over. Am I boring you yet? And over again.
I guess I'll see if I can get my old gig back selling butt scratchers at the ballpark. Butt scratcher! Butt scratcher! Get your butt scratcher here! Butt scratcher!
Butt scratcher.
Butt scratcher!
Butt scratcher.
Butt scratcher!
Butt scratcher.
Butt scratcher!
This is something we touched on a little bit in the last video with parallel rhythmic structure, how repeating a similar rhythmic pattern creates a melody in the audience's head. With constantly repeated rhythms, the effect is different. I would compare it to slowly going insane. You know when you say a word over and over again, it loses all its meaning? It just becomes a sound coming out of your face? Like if you just said Pavlova over and over again. Pavlova. 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 It's not really Pavlova anymore, is it? It's more... Repeating the same thing makes us focus less on the meaning of the words and instead on their sound and rhythm. It also means we're much more attuned to much smaller changes in the comedian's expression. This joke about muffins by Ross Noble is an awesome example. Listen to how he sets up a rhythm, then begins messing with it. It's playful and really funny, and the laughs come almost entirely from Noble's use of rhythm and pause.
I go into muffin shops, right, and I try and find human faces in the tops of the muffins. Yeah. It's harder than you think, you know. Yeah. I've got a real gift for it, you know. Because the blueberries throw you off, you know. It's kind of like, you know, you kind of look like that and you kind of, there's a face. Next muffin, you know. There's a face, next muffin. That's the speed I go at. I'm quite good, you know. There's a face, next muffin. There's a face, next muffin. There's a face, next muffin. There's a face, you know. I'm a bit slower when I'm doing, like, celebrity faces, you know. That's quite hard to do, you know. There's a face, next muffin, that. There's a face, next muffin. There's a face, next muffin. I did that wrong there, didn't I? I saw the face, and then I lingered, and then I went, oh, it should be, there's a face, next muffin, like that. There's a face, next muffin. That's the speed, not, there's a face. Next muffin, you know that, you know. Almost like the face reminded you of a loved one in past. Now there is a face. Next muffin. Yeah.
Okay, let's take this up a gear. What happens if you're not even using your voice? If you're just banging, scraping, sliding things around? At a fundamental level, are there funny sounds? And can you put them in a sequence or give them a rhythm that gets the audience to laugh? The answer is yes-ish. Tig Notaro got pretty close. In her second appearance on Conan, she abandons her material and just starts sliding a stool across the stage. It's equal parts amazing and insane, and the key thing is, she starts getting the audience to giggle simply from the squealing, scraping sounds she's able to make. In a wonderful example of parallel thinking, this bit is remarkably similar to something Stuart Lee did in 41st Best Stand-Up Ever. In this routine about Richard Littlejohn amending the names of prostitutes on gravestones with a chisel, Lee ends up smacking the mic on the stand for literal minutes on end. His annotations for this routine in How I Escaped My Certain Fate are really interesting. I've highlighted the key bits, but feel free to read the whole thing.
Prostitute. Not a woman who works as a prostitute.
Talking to Josh, we stumbled into a conversation about Bill Cosby's rhythmic delivery, how he performed the rhythms of comedy, but without any real words, or content, or anything.
And apologies for bringing up Bill Cosby, but whatever.
I hear it.
Yeah, what a legend.
Yeah.
He was talking about seeing him perform at university, and that Cosby would go on, and he would just be mumbling gibberish, but the rhythm of it was funny.
And what would he do? Would he have to do a speech?
Yes, he had to do a speech, and it was then that I realized what a rhythm comic he is, because nothing he's saying is making sense, but he's killing. He could change his pitch, and so it was so musical. So we went out there, and he's a huge star, and you saw, oh, if you have great rhythm and you're a massive star, you can go out there, and literally it was just like, dazzum deezum slows boo, and people were just going crazy. And they go, remember, don't be a June bug, be a biggleboo. And people were going nuts and going, he's right. And I was the whole time standing behind him going, I see.
And that to me is just the coolest. Bill Cosby. But I think that the best comedians do that. I mean, George Carlin, huge in terms of just manipulating rhythm. He has this great quote.
Don't forget, what we do is oratory. It's rhetoric. It's not just comedy, it's a form of rhetoric.
Meaning there are all sorts of mechanisms at work. And the big one is rhythm. And he then does a little riff where he just sort of mumbles and scats like a kind of jazzy type thing. And then gets a laugh out of the audience. He doesn't even say any words. He just goes.
You listen for rhythms. You look for ways to sing at the same time you're talking and to go da-da-dun, 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 dun-dun, and dun, da-dun, dun, 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 da-da-dun, da-da-dun. And it's just natural.
And people in the audience, like John, he makes Jon Stewart laugh. He makes like the audience kind of giggle a little bit. He didn't even say anything. And I think that sort of sums it up with this idea that it's like the layer of the pie, just like the base level, bringing people into your cadence, into your like your vibe, your feel.
Okay, we're going to abruptly change course and talk about Carlin for 10 minutes. Because how could I not? Carlin is the most rhythmic performer in the history of stand-up.
I'm the architect.
Sorry, Bernie. Sorry, Jerry. Sorry, John. It's true. If you disagree, meet me outside the Comedy Store with whatever weapon you see fit to use, and we will battle it out to the death. Carlin could perform 20-minute routines, perfectly measuring every beat, pause, and word. It's funny that Carlin's first major influences were not comedians, but musicians and singers.
First of all, I was attracted to any complicated songs I heard on the radio. Anything that was challenging and difficult to say. I learned about pass that peace pipe and bury that hatchet like the chalk sauce, chick sauce, chattahoochee chippewas, and those chick-chimex, Cherokee, chipultepex do. Anything like that that was challenging verbally, I liked.
Pass that peace pipe and bury that hatchet like the chalk sauce, chick sauce, chattahoochee chippewas, and those chick-chimex, Cherokees, chipultepex, and those chicootamies, chepachets, and chickadees, chocos, tangos, Chattanoogas, featuros, do.
And Danny Kaye did that. He was musically funny. He could sing funny songs. He was incredibly adept verbally. He could do those lyrics.
If people unsuspecting now accept without detecting an imposter who's not posted as a pedigreed inspector, could this palpable imposter say a gypsy or a Costa? Could he possibly get past them by his posture?
See, that's the Danny Kaye part of my genes. That's the Danny Kaye, to be really good with language and to put it into kind of interesting sounding bits and snatches and runs and trills and things. And so I've kind of gotten that. The intricate verbal pyrotechnics, you know. Boy, he was fabulous.
Whisking through the whispering woods on a wild Romany pony with a yak 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 and a yak cedrak and a yak cedrak cedroni rides the gypsy, the gypsy, the gypsy, the gypsy.
It seems dumb to say, but I find it staggering how quickly Carlin could speak. He could speed up and slow down as if adjusting a dial. He could spit out setups insanely quickly before digging into a punchline.
Suppose you're in a bar and one guy's sitting over on the side reading a book, not bothering anybody. Another guy standing up at the front with a machete, banging it on the bar, saying, "I'll kill the next motherfucker who comes in here." Who are you gonna watch?
In a lot of his jokes, he adjusts his pace, pitch, and cadence for every word.
Filthy, foul, vile, vulgar.
It always changes a little later, and we'll all get used to how this place sounds.
He knew how to contrast the low and grisly with the high and squeaky.
Football is concerned with downs. What down is it? Baseball is concerned with ups. Who's up? Are you up? I'm not up. He's up.
Ring any bells?
Because when you're little, your life is up, the future is up, everything you want is up.
Wait up, hold up, shut up.
And he knew how to get the audience's attention.
And if I think of anything really intelligent, I'll say it slowly and clearly.
And he bloody well did this.
I've been uplinked and downloaded, I've been inputted and outsourced. I know the upside of downsizing, I know the downside of upgrading.
Stand back, Kendrick. Angry old rapping man coming through.
I interface with my database is in cyberspace, so I'm interactive, I'm hyperactive, and from time to time I'm radioactive.
1978 Carlin on location. I mean, I could spend all day flicking to random parts of this special with my jaw hanging open and dribble pooling on the floor as I marveled at how musical his delivery is. He can build momentum or energy, then undercut it or play with it. Look how he builds the joke up here, stretching or condensing the words to build momentum.
Yes, you get so popular when you die. All the flowers you get, think of the flowers you get when you die. You get more flowers when you die than you got in your whole life. All your flowers arrive at once, too late.
This is such a wonderful little moment. Note how he really stretches the all in all the flowers to make sure his point is clear. Contrast this to the sudden shift in tone at the punchline, the high to low pitch, and it's complemented by a wonderful piece of physical comedy. The crumpling of the shoulders, the wilted expression, the sad downward eyes. It's simple, but oh so effective. If you watch Carlin move in these early specials, he moves in rhythm to the jokes, crouching down or standing on his tiptoes depending on his pitch. Every note in his voice is complemented by a posture or glance. He's in total flow.
You can't keep track of the time. What's the sense? Give you an example. There's a moment coming. It's not here yet. It's still on the way. It's in the future. It hasn't arrived. Here it comes. Here it is. Oh, shit, it's gone. There's no now. There's no now. Everything is the near future or the recent past. But there's no present. Welcome to the present. Gone again.
For a master of pace and pitch, it's all the more revealing when he totally screws something up.
I get bothered by the time. Not so much the time itself, the people bother me for the time. People come up to me on the street. I'm sure you've had this happen to you. People come up to you and say, what time it is? Well, they might say, what time is it? I shouldn't get into these ballads.
I love this clip because it shows he's a regular, mortal human being. You can tell in the build-up he's kinda struggling a little bit. He's a little slow, off-tempo when he says,
I shouldn't get into these ballads.
That's a really interesting choice of word. Ballads. This implies orchestration and exactitude. I think more than anything this clip shows how heightened his routines usually are. They're dramatic and theatrical. There's real flow and tempo, and as we said in the last video, this minor hiccup brings the routine grinding to a halt. Carlin's rhythm was as important as the words themselves, and when the rhythm was off, it ruined the whole joke. Look how he obsesses over this sentence. He literally can't leave it alone after he received a letter saying one of the 7 dirty words should be removed from his most famous routine.
Shit, piss, fuck, cunt, cocksucker, tits. Does it sound like something's missing? Does it sound like an old friend is gone? Shit, piss, fuck, cunt, cocksucker, tits. Remember the old rhythm? Shit, piss, fucking cocksucker, motherfucker, tits. Cocksucker, motherfucker, tits. Cocksucker, motherfucker, tits. Cocksucker, motherfucker, tits. Now, shit, piss, fucking cocksucker, tits. It falls apart. It isn't going anywhere.
So his musicality sucks you in, but his ability to subvert or surprise is what gets you to laugh. Carlin would often set up a melody in a joke before subverting it for the audience's amusement. Check out this short joke from his 1996 special, Back in Town.
Because, I mean, even with this stuff we preach about the sanctity of life, we don't practice it. We don't practice it. Look at what we kill. Mosquitoes and flies, because they're pests. Lions and tigers, because it's fun. Chickens and pigs, 'cause we're hungry. Pheasants and quails, 'cause it's fun, and we're hungry. And people, we kill people, 'cause they're pests, and it's fun.
It really pays to be specific. The first section he's setting up the joke, but the real melody kicks in here. He names a pair of animals, Then he emphasizes. For pests, fun, and hungry, he provides a slightly different intonation that we'll remember.
Pests, fun, hungry.
These lines all have a total of 8 syllables. That's the melody. Now he can subvert it.
Pheasants and quails, 'cause it's fun.
Here we are a syllable less, only 7, and he slightly underemphasizes fun. 2 little cues that there's more to come.
And we're hungry.
He's now subverted the rhythm of the joke, a disruption that the audience intuitively finds funny.
Nice.
Again. Note how he's undercommitting, not quite throwing himself into these lines, which is building the tension for the real punchline of the joke.
And people. We kill people.
If he was following the melody, he'd say, and we kill people, or something like that. But instead, he breaks his final point into 2 sentences. The pitch of his voice goes up each time, and he takes a couple big pauses.
And people. We kill people.
He might as well be holding a sign above his head that says, pay attention. This is the big finale.
'Cause they're pests. And it's fun.
He's really emphasizing this more than any of the previous times he said it. He scrunches up his face, there's real venom. He bulges his eyes and exaggerates his posture. This booming finale signals the end of the joke. It really is a song. Carlin sets up a melody, subverts it, then adds to it, all while building to a climax. It provides variety and surprises us, but only because Carlin has set up a clear rhythm and tempo for the joke in the first place. It's bloody masterful.
I read something when I was still a comedian in the Greenwich Village. A friend of mine, Bob Altman, he told me about Arthur Koestler's act of creation. He showed a triptych, a 3-paneled illustration, and the jester was in the first triptych. And the jester is, of course, a person who makes jokes. He makes these funny jokes. But if he has ideas attached, if the jokes are built on sound ideas, if there's something philosophical in his thinking that the jokes illuminate, then he's a bit of a philosopher too. So he goes to the second part of the triptych. Jester becomes jester philosopher now. And if he does those things with marvelous language that thrills us, particularly graceful combinations of words and runs and rhythms of language, then he becomes a poet as well. And so the jester has become a philosopher poet, and he's all one. I think I can now do a little justice to that theory. And now I feel fully realized as a performing writer.
Rat shit, bat shit, dirty old twat. 69 assholes tied in a knot. Hooray! Lizard shit, fuck!
Okay, Carlin epitomizes a comedian whose rhythm informs the punchlines. But what about those comedians who have disrupted their signals? This final chunk is dedicated to those who have screwed up their rhythm intentionally, the grand deceivers and the rhythm renegades.
You're playing all the wrong notes.
I'm playing all the right notes, but not necessarily in the right order.
Harold Ramis was interviewed by NPR, and his answer to a question about comedic timing is really illuminating.
Well, you know the old joke about timing. You pretend I'm the great old comedian. You ask me, what is the secret of your success? Go ahead, do it.
Okay. I know I can't believe I'm walking into this, but Harold, what's the secret to comedy?
Timing. But it's true, and some of the actors I've worked with, some people score. There's a conventional rhythm. It's almost like classical music, where you watch a sitcom. You don't even have to listen to the words. It could be in a different language. You know when the punchline's coming, and you know when the audience will laugh.
That is so not the opposite of taking somebody's underwear.
Look at me. I'm Chandler. Could I be wearing any more clothes?
But then you work with people who resist any hint of conventional timing. Bill Murray's one of those actors who will always He'll never do what you expect, and it's not just timing; it's dynamics too. But timing is one of the mechanical dynamics of comedy. But Bill was an actor who would always defy your sense of it.
Morning. See the groundhog? Yeah. Think it'll be an early spring.
Didn't we do this yesterday?
I don't know what you mean.
And it can be frustrating when you've written something in a very conventional rhythm and you have an actor who doesn't do that, because they're real actors and they're actually trying to create meaning instead of just trying to create timing.
Some comedians and comedic actors like Bill Murray have disguised their comedic rhythms. They know where the obvious beats for a joke are, but instead have chosen a rhythm that's more unconventional and a little less obvious to predict.
And that's why a lot of you are sitting there going, this guy's hilarious, but I don't know why. And it's because the comics you go and see normally, they're sort of in 4/4 time. But I'm like, it's like a jazz thing really. It could go, I know where the beat is, but it's probably too advanced what I'm talking about. So it's, I'm not saying it's better than them, but
Stuart Lee summarizes this perfectly when describing the Mighty Boosh, after watching Julian Barrett's penchant for spontaneous riffage.
I've been good, yeah, very busy, working on my theatre skills, training myself up for the, this run, working on the ancient art of mime, so check me out. Ow! Ooh, coming at ya! Yeah, I'm in a chimney. See that? How about this? Look, I'm next to a log. Chaffinch.
Most comedy happens in 4/4, or at least in a recognizable rhythm. The punchlines fall on the beat. But the Boosh are like Sonny Murray. There's a pulse in their heads, but only they can hear it. And the timing of the funny lines is falling all around it, like dried stalks of spaghetti being dropped onto a china plate. You're laughing on the offbeats, and the onbeats are empty, glaring holes. It is brilliant, and disproves the rigor of accepted comic theory. But as with all art, you can only really do it wrong if you first mastered doing it right.
The only problem with when you are the moon, like me, is you have such a chalky white face, it makes your teeth look yellow. And I went to the dentist, and he said, "Oh, your teeth are yellow." I said, "No, only when you compare them to my chalky white face. If I had skin like yours, they would not look yellow." I had 15 fillings, and he said that would be £500. And I said, "I don't pay for nothing. I'm the moon." And I raised out of the chair, and I went off back up, and he couldn't stop me. Every now and then I receive letter, "You still owe that money." I say, "I might pay it, I might not. I'm the moon, I don't pay fucking dental fees."
I also think this is why Bob Mortimer has systematically broken David Mitchell on Would I Lie to You.
It's a freaking prison, isn't it, really?
It's not simply that Bob's stories are outrageous, although they are. It's that he delivers them wrong. They're full of random details, illogical tangents, and unpredictable pauses. He's like that dog in Up. Squirrel! He's constantly getting distracted, going down blind alleys, telling a story that has nothing to do with the original story, returning to the original story, forgetting which part of the original story he was supposed to be telling, talking about Gary Cheeseman.
Do you know, Gary Cheeseman was a big lad, yeah? A very big head. Sniper's dream, they used to call him.
Etc. Compare him to Lee Mack, who is a great comedian in his own right, but Mortimer's polar opposite. There is an obvious rhythm to Lee's jokes. They're quick and punchy. They're clearly intended as jokes, and he clearly signals where he wants the audience to laugh.
Not you, him. Does your husband play cricket?
Mortimer doesn't do any of that. He trips, stumbles, and giggles his way through these stories with all the charm of a confused uncle at a Sunday roast. There's no clear rhythm to what he says, and it's not obvious what he wants us to find funny.
It's Bob.
Sorry?
It's you, Bob.
It's apple pie tonight.
Is it? It's Friday then?
Yes.
In fact, he often seems to be trying to trick us. He'll say something genuinely insane, but in the manner of something totally reasonable. Then he'll sort of look around in a kind of bewildered way, as if he has no idea why any of this is funny.
Yeah.
Then a little bit of fly, silence, a little bit of fly, and then quite loudly, but not to frighten anyone, the word wolf.
Mac tells you where the punchline is. Mortimer wants you to believe there isn't one. And just for the record, the way he moves doesn't help either. I hadn't noticed this before researching this video, but Mortimer has such a confusing, twitchy energy. If Carlin moves in rhythm to the jokes, Mortimer is positively erratic.
Ah, no.
He'll glance over in random places, he'll stare at the floor, his attention will shift seemingly at random.
Called Let's Dance, which I did with Chris Rea. And after we completed the recording...
What's he looking at? Why are you looking under the table? What the f*** are you looking at, Bob? Bob's stories become so entangled with these flights of fancy that truth and fiction blur into a puddled mess, and his chaotic delivery only adds to the confusion. This also means the bulletproof reasoning David Mitchell usually uses to obliterate his guests doesn't work. In the latter part of Bob's stories, Mitchell looks like a robot having a heart attack. It's like every file in his brain has corrupted at the same time. You can't apply logic to something as illogical as Bob Mortimer, and Mitchell is left stammering, stumbling, crying with laughter as smoke billows from his ears and an error sign flashes above his face.
What should I base it on, Bob?
George.
Sit on, Bob.
George.
This, of course, led me and Josh to talking about the ultimate rhythmic mastermind and Bob Mortimer's Canadian soulmate, Norm Macdonald. I read a YouTube comment years ago that said Norm's delivery was like a dementia patient who starts telling a story and only remembers the punchline halfway through. His rhythm is unpredictable, scattered, meandering. He is the epitome of a comedian whose cadence is impossible to replicate.
What do you remember? What are some of your Regis memories?
Well, one time I was on his other show, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? And it was Celebrity Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, so the questions are a little easier.
You won.
I heard they didn't give you the money.
Yeah.
No, they give it to a charity. They don't tell you.
That sucks.
No, they give it to sick children.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, that's nice. They need money too.
Are you drunk?
And I think it's a case of someone who knows so much. Like, you have to learn the rules before you break them. So he knows exactly what he's doing. Like, everything he's doing is on purpose and calculated, I think. Or like flowing just based on his own intuitive knowledge of what's funny. But yeah, I was just watching the Dirty Johnny joke. You know that one? Mm-hmm. It's just the greatest. He's got the twinkle in his eye, you know, it's like, where he just is totally in control. And he says that he says when the second parent like also works at the hatchery, and then he pauses for just a little like a split second and then just goes, thank God for the hatchery.
Marjorie puts up her hand. Marjorie, what's your story? She says, well, my dad works for the hatchery, as all of us. Thank God for the hatchery. She says, or we'd all be lost.
It's just that little pause right before where you're kind of like, oh man, did he just ad-lib that? It's just, it's so funny. Even, I mean, he's probably written the whole thing before, but he makes it feel like it's spontaneous with his little herky-jerk pauses.
Whether Norm has this all mapped out or if he is winging it is up for debate. He said himself,
I have a fantastic punchline.
Oh, you think of a punchline, as it were, and then you can work to it.
Great punchline, and then I just wander around, because I used to do it by rote, like I would, that fellow there booked me on Letterman. And then you had to do 5 minutes, so they had to be word for word.
Yeah.
But I'm not a good enough comic actor to pretend it's my first time saying it. So instead, I just started yapping, and then I would think, out of like desperation, you're funny, kind of, you know what I mean?
Right.
And then you just think of little jokes, knowing the giant joke is coming.
Mm-hmm.
But this has been countered by various stories about Norm going on some supposedly improvised run, only to later confess he had the whole thing mapped out.
I spoke to Smigel. Norm went on a run, and it was hilarious. And he went up to Norm and said, "That was amazing, that run you went on in the moment." And he said, "That wasn't in the moment, that was completely crafted." Every single word of it was written out.
Serendipitously, another version of Norm telling the Dirty Johnny joke was released, and we can see that these misplaced pauses and seemingly screwed up lines are all part of the plan.
Okay, Marjorie, what's your story? Well, my father works for the hatchery. Most of us.
Most people in that town worked in the hatchery.
Worked at the hatchery.
Thank God for the hatchery, she says. Or where would we be?
When Norm says,
I'm not a good enough comic actor to pretend it's my first time saying it.
That's simply not true. He was a brilliant joke teller. Regardless of whether these mistakes were originally accidents, Norm turned them into offbeats that disrupt the rhythm of a joke. You are constantly wondering if he has any idea what he's doing, which makes him so fun to watch.
His timing is like a drummer's.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a jazz drummer.
In Born Standing Up, Steve Martin talks about how he veered away from traditional punchlines. I think it captures Norm's intent perfectly.
With conventional joke telling, there's a moment when the comedian delivers the punchline, and the audience knows it's the punchline, and their response ranges from polite to uproarious. What bothered me about the formula was the nature of the laugh it inspired, a vocal acknowledgement that a joke had been told, like automatic applause at the end of a song. These notions stayed with me for months, until they formed an idea that revolutionized my comic direction. What if there were no punchlines? What if there were no indicators? What if I created tension and never released it? What if I headed for a climax, but all I delivered was an anticlimax? What would the audience do with all that tension? Theoretically, it would have to come out sometime. But if I kept denying them the formality of a punchline, the audience would eventually pick their own place to laugh, essentially out of desperation. This type of laugh seems stronger to me, as they would be laughing at something they chose, rather than being told exactly when to laugh.
This applies to old Mortimer too. This scatological delivery, coupled with the slow accumulation of all these random details, builds into a form of madness. It's like a pressure valve filling up. With no clear punchlines telling you where to laugh, you are left with no choice but to start laughing at the insanity of it all.
I find that when I listen to the audience when Norm Macdonald's performing, is he doesn't get his laughs don't work on the jokes. He doesn't get like the big laughs on the punchlines. Instead, he builds a kind of hysteria, it feels like. Like the audience knows it's funny, but he's not giving them the clear punchlines and signals and rhythms for them to laugh. So instead he gets this kind of, it's like a slow rush of these people kind of slowly losing their minds is what it feels like to me.
Now, if they find you in the woods, they always find you in the same place. Every time they will find you in a shallow grave. I don't know why they don't just look there in the first place. But if I was the police chief, I'd go, listen, I want every shallow grave in the vicinity checked out. I want to clear out this case by Tuesday on account of I'm running for DA or whatever. But
what that is doing, I think, is creating like so much tension. When you create the tension, then you have so much power. You can play with that, and you can relieve it or keep building it, let it hang, let it simmer, let people squirm a little bit, and then you can resolve it at the end. And that's something that great drummers do, playing over the bar line, messing with the time a little bit, and then bringing it back around to like sync up again with the band. You know, if you go for a fill that's really out there, and then you come back around and you bring it back to the beat, that'll hit really hard because it's like you created a lot of tension, then you bring it back. Same with the intricate chord progression or something, like going to a dominant chord, it just like adds a little bit more tension. And I think Norm does that with his timing too, where it does create this sort of like high wire type feeling.
Yeah.
Like Sebastian Maniscalco is the complete opposite, where it's just like, you know, setup, punchline, here we go. I'm doing this bit and it's rocking and rolling and I'm playing this big theater and like I'm a rock star. But Norm is very much like the just the opposite. You can't actually like grab onto any rhythm or anything. Like there's just like, you have no possible way to know what's coming next. And that is what makes him a genius.
What about in the old days when they took pictures of you way back, you know, where they pulled that thing and exploded and stuff? I got a picture of my great-grandfather. The thing took 6 hours to take your picture, and there's a picture of my great-grandfather, one. They only had, every guy had one picture back then. And it's just him like, I gotta get back, feed them hogs. Who's gonna feed the hogs? Somebody gotta feed them hogs. Now.
And if you think about, you know, vaudeville or something, literally there'd be a drum cue, but you know, rim shot, like laugh now. That's the joke. That was the punchline, and it does kind of heighten it. And when that cue is taken away, you're like, whoa, what's going on?
Yeah.
And it does create that sort of hysteria. People like kind of squirming a little bit, or like shaking, laughing uncontrollably because it's so funny.
If I could quickly return to the rap analogy from the last video, if Seinfeld or Sebastian Maniscalco are like Drake, Norm is more like MF Doom. He plays over the bar line and he waits in the offbeats of the joke. As a result, his flow is less predictable, his punchlines more surprising, and for me at least, he's much more fun to listen to. We all miss you, Norm. You and your bloody ridiculous delivery.
I love rappers with that syncopated, uneven phrasing where the sentences don't line up with the bars. Because like you said, then you can't predict what's gonna happen. The point of appreciating it is to see what the very most clever human beings are capable of doing that you didn't think possible.
Please note that the percentages in these pie graphs do not add up to 100% because the math was done by a woman. For those of you hissing at that joke, it should be noted that that joke was written by a woman. So now you don't know what the hell to do, do you? No, I'm just kidding. We don't hire women.
So where does this leave us? How we sound is as important as what we say, and the sign of a great comedian is when the jokes become totally entwined in the rhythm of their delivery. I think the goal of any aspiring comedian should be to find a rhythm that is entirely their own, which leaves a mark on their material as indelible as a signature on a piece of paper.
I think this may be something here, where maybe we've arrived on something where like certain great comedians, you can get a feel for their style, or like you can already get a kick out of it just from the same word, the contour of the way they talk. Like Mulaney, you know, like sort of like that's kind of a Mulaney sort of feel, you know, like a murderer. Like how he's kind of just does those little asides and the ups and downs of it.
Sir Patrick Stewart was introducing the musical guest, and this is how he did it. He went, "Ladies and gentlemen, salt and pepper!" Like he was surprised by pepper. Like minutes before, they'd been like, "We can't find pepper anywhere." And he was like, "If we must go on with salt alone, we will go on with salt alone." And they're like, 3, 2, 1. And Pepper bursts through the door and he's like, "Ladies and gentlemen, salt. And what's this? Pepper!"
Sort of like when you listen to a record, if you know about different drummers, you can listen to a record and be like, oh, that's that person on the drums. They're playing the same beat that everybody plays, you know, rock beat, but you could, if you really know a lot about music, you can be like, oh my God, that's Bernard Purdie, that's Steve Gadd on the drums. I know it for sure. Like I just know that sound. Comedy might be the same way. I spoke like, oh hello. It might be the same way.
Well, we play music off of a boombox.
A boombox. Wow. Okay.
Comedy might be the same way, where like someone like Seinfeld or Mulaney or Mark Norman, like they have this cadence, like linked to their persona, to their material, like it's intrinsic.
And then they said, how did they phrase it? Then they said, give us some money as a gift. We want a gift, but only if it's money.
One thing that was very interesting that I learned on my Rhythms of Comedy journey is that, so I made the video of Hannah Gadsby, who I think is just amazing, incredible speaker, incredible orator, rhetorician. Her producer and now wife, Jenny Shamash, reached out to me after I made that video with Hannah Gadsby and was like, Josh, this is wild. I watched Hannah writing the jokes for her special. And when she was writing the jokes, she would tap the beat out on her legs to get the rhythm just right. And she would like drum along to herself while she was writing. And the way that she was doing it was exactly the way that you heard it.
Wow.
Now, I have resting bitch face. That's what it's called. It's what's colloquially known as resting bitch face. Only women have resting bitch face. Men simply have very important thoughts you best not interrupt them having.
That's amazing.
And so I guess top comedians do actually think about this quite a bit, intentionally.
I'm about to ask you a question right now, and that question is this. The lewd photo, just how big a deal is it?
Well, frankly, Bert, it's not that big a deal, if you know what I mean.
I don't know what you mean, but it had the cadence of a joke.
I think like when I go see a show, I just want to be surprised. This is something that Penn and Teller, magicians, talk about all the time. Surprise equals entertainment. When I go to a show, I just want to see something I've never seen before. I want to see something where I'm like, whoa, or something I've never thought about before. Oh man, I never considered that. Or when you listen to a song, it's like, oh, I've never heard a beat kind of like this. I've never heard that sound before. Surprise equals entertainment in a lot of ways. And I think that's really profound. Just give people something that they've never seen before and something that, would be fun and different to perform. So yeah, always want to push the envelope to do something different.
You gotta prepare these things, you gotta be a little smarter than that. What I would do, and I would never, ever kill a lady in cold blood. I wouldn't. I know I say that now, I don't really know. I can't predict the future, but I don't believe I know there's no river long enough doesn't contain a bend, but I believe that right now, and it might just be vanity, I don't think I would kill a woman in cold blood. But